Every time you put in work that doesn't show immediate results, you're investing in your future self. It's not glamorous, it's gritty. But grit is what keeps the dream alive when motivation dies. You'll have days when you feel invisible, when your work feels pointless, when you wonder if anyone even notices. Those are the days that define you. Those are the moments when average people give up, but underdogs dig deeper. Because you don't work for applause, you work for progress. You work for that quiet moment when you look back and realize you've come too far to quit. You work because you love the person you're becoming through the process. The work itself becomes the reward. That's the paradox of greatness. The harder you work, the more fulfillment you find in the work itself. Outworking expectations also means accepting that results take time. There's no shortcut to mastery. You can't rush greatness. You have to grind for it. Every hour of work is a seed planted. It may take months or years before it blooms, but when it does, the harvest is undeniable. Patience and persistence are the twin pillars of the underdog's success. They don't demand immediate results because they trust the process. They know that if they stay consistent long enough, success becomes inevitable. You can't lose if you refuse to stop, and when success finally comes, it hits different. Because you know you earned every ounce of it. You didn't cheat your way there. You didn't rely on luck or shortcuts. You built it with your own hands, your own sweat, your own sacrifice. There's a satisfaction in that kind of work that nothing else can give. The pride of knowing that you didn't just reach the mountain, you climbed every step yourself. You didn't just win. You became the kind of person who deserves to win. That's the magic of effort. It transforms you while you're chasing the goal. The real reward isn't the trophy, it's the transformation. When you outwork every expectation, you become undeniable. People may doubt your skill, your background, your resources, but they can't deny your consistency. They can't ignore your effort. Work ethic breaks down every barrier. It earns respect from even your critics. It turns skeptics into believers, not because you argued with them, but because you showed them. That's the underdog's secret weapon. Proof through perseverance. You don't need to talk about what you're going to do. You just do it, again and again, until the world can't ignore you anymore. And while others are busy chasing validation, you're chasing mastery. While others get comfortable after small wins, you're still climbing. The underdog never stops. They don't see the finish line, they see the next level. Because once you've learned to outwork expectations, you realize there's no limit to what's possible. Every ceiling becomes a new floor. Every goal achieved becomes a new starting point. Effort doesn't just get you results, it keeps you evolving. So you keep showing up, you keep grinding, you keep doing the work long after the excitement fades. Because you know that hard work doesn't just build success, it builds character, credibility, and confidence. And that combination makes you unstoppable. The underdog may start with nothing, but through relentless effort, they create everything. Because the truth is, you can doubt an underdog's talent, you can question their timing, but you can never underestimate their work ethic. It's the one thing that guarantees they'll always find a way to win. Now let's talk about step 4. Turn setbacks into data. Every underdog knows that setbacks are not the end, they're part of the process. Failure is not final, it's feedback. Life will hit you hard, and it doesn't care how prepared or passionate you are. There will be days when you give everything you have and still come up short. Moments when all the effort, all the hours, and all the sacrifices seem to mean nothing. But those moments are not wasted unless you choose to see them that way. The underdog understands that setbacks are not punishment, they're information. Every mistake, rejection, and disappointment is data evidence about what works, what doesn't, and who you need to become next. When you start seeing your failures as lessons instead of losses, everything changes. You stop fearing them and start learning from them. You stop avoiding them and start analyzing them. You begin to realize that the path to success isn't a straight line. It's a series of course corrections guided by the feedback that only failure can give you. Turning setbacks into data requires emotional maturity. It means taking your ego out of the equation and facing the truth about where you went wrong. It means being brutally honest with yourself instead of blaming the world. Most people let failure define their identity. They fail once and start to believe they are a failure. But the underdog knows that failing doesn't make you a failure, it makes you a student. Every failure holds a lesson, and those lessons are what shape your next move. When you lose, you're given two choices. You can either collapse under the weight of it or collect the information it offers. The ones who rise are the ones who choose to study their setbacks instead of hiding from them. They turn pain into patterns and frustration into formulas for improvement. They look at every obstacle and ask, What is this trying to teach me? Setbacks have a way of stripping away illusions. They reveal what's real and what's not. They show you where your weaknesses are, where your preparation was shallow, where your plan needs refinement. And that's the beauty of it. Every time you fail, life gives you clarity. It tells you what you need to fix, what habits need to change, what mindset needs to evolve. The people who avoid failure never gain that clarity. They stay stuck, repeating the same mistakes because they're afraid to face them. The underdog, on the other hand, runs toward the fire. They're not afraid of getting burned because they know that heat forges strength. Every painful experience is a forge, a place where resilience is built, not broken. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't luck. It's how they interpret failure. Most people personalize it. They make every setback a reflection of their worth. They think, I failed, so I must not be good enough. But the underdog doesn't internalize failure, they interpret it. They ask smarter questions. Instead of, why did this happen to me? They ask, what can I learn from this? That one question changes everything. It takes you out of the role of the victim and puts you back in control. Because when you start learning from your pain, you start owning it. And when you own it, you can transform it. Every rejection becomes redirection. Every closed door becomes protection. Every failure becomes foundation. Setbacks are like mirrors. They reflect your habits, your preparation, and your mindset. They show you where you've grown complacent or careless. They reveal patterns you couldn't see in success. That's why failure is such a powerful teacher. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter you. It shows you exactly who you are when things fall apart. And it's in those moments when you're stripped of excuses that you find out what you're really made of. The underdog understands that pain exposes potential. It forces you to dig deeper, to reevaluate, to rebuild. The process is uncomfortable, but that discomfort is where transformation begins. To turn setbacks into data, you have to replace emotion with evaluation. You can't learn while you're busy being angry at yourself. You can't grow if you're too busy blaming others. Every time something goes wrong, step back and ask, what did this teach me about my preparation, my focus, my patience, my execution? The answers are there if you're willing to look honestly. That's how the underdog grows faster than anyone else. They don't let pain go to waste. They turn every failure into a manual for future success. They dissect it, extract the wisdom, and apply it. That's why people who once doubted them eventually wonder how they keep bouncing back stronger. It's because the underdog doesn't bounce back, they bounce forward. Setbacks also teach humility. They remind you that no matter how hard you work or how much you believe, you're still human, you're gonna make mistakes. And that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Failure humbles the arrogant and strengthens the hungry. It keeps you grounded. It teaches you patience, empathy, and perspective. When you've fallen enough times, you stop judging others for their mistakes. You start understanding that everyone's fighting their own battle. That humility becomes part of your strength. It keeps you from becoming complacent. It keeps you learning even when you've started winning. The underdog doesn't see failure as an interruption, they see it as instruction. It's part of the curriculum of success. The more you fail, the more data you collect. And the more data you collect, the better you get at making decisions. That's why failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the foundation of it. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than most people have even tried. The difference is, they didn't stop to complain. They studied, they adjusted, they kept moving. And every time they fell, they rose a little smarter, a little stronger, a little more strategic. That's what it means to turn setbacks into data. It's the science of resilience. When you start analyzing your setbacks, you begin to see patterns. You start recognizing the moments when you usually lose focus, when your habits slip, when you let emotion take over logic. That self-awareness becomes a superpower. You learn your triggers, your weaknesses, your blind spots, and once you know them, they lose power over you. You can't fix what you don't understand, and failure gives you that understanding. The underdog uses that knowledge to evolve. They pivot. They experiment. They adapt faster than others because they're constantly learning from their losses. They stop fearing mistakes because they realize that the faster they fail, the faster they grow. One of the biggest traps people fall into is shame. The idea that failure means something's wrong with them. But the truth is, shame keeps you stuck. It locks you in a loop of self-pity and paralysis. The underdog breaks that loop by turning guilt into growth. Instead of saying, I messed up, they say, I'm learning how to do this better. That simple reframe keeps momentum alive. It keeps you curious instead of defeated. When you're curious, you start experimenting again. You start trying new approaches, testing new ideas, and every experiment brings new data. Eventually, you realize that there are no real failures, only results. Some results show progress, others show what not to do next time, but both move you forward. The beauty of failure is that it builds mental calluses. Every time you go through pain and survive it, you get tougher. Your tolerance for discomfort grows. Things that once felt unbearable start to feel normal. That's how resilience is built, through repetition. You stop flinching at hardship. You stop breaking down when things go wrong. You start expecting setbacks as part of the journey. That mindset gives you an unshakable calm, because you know that no matter what happens, you'll find a way to adapt. And that adaptability is the underdog's secret weapon. While others panic under pressure, you analyze. You look for patterns. You make adjustments. And in doing so, you turn chaos into control. Setbacks are also powerful filters. They separate the committed from the convenient. Everyone's excited at the start of a goal, when the vision is clear and the motivation is high. But when things get hard, when the results slow down, that's when most people disappear. The underdog doesn't. They stay. They endure. They keep showing up because they understand that the journey was never supposed to be smooth. Every time they get knocked down, they remind themselves that this is how champions are made, not in moments of glory, but in moments of struggle. Every obstacle becomes a test of will, and every test they pass reinforces their identity as someone who doesn't quit. The more you fail, the less afraid you become of failing again. Fear of failure disappears when you realize it's not fatal. You stop avoiding risk. You stop hesitating. You move faster, think sharper, act bolder. Failure stops being a wall and becomes a mirror. You use it to check your progress, to refine your technique, to measure your growth. That's how you evolve from uncertain to unstoppable. The underdog becomes fearless not because they don't fail, but because they've learned that every failure makes them better. The more data they collect, the more power they have to improve. And sometimes, failure redirects you to something even greater than what you originally wanted. You might chase one goal, fail at it, and realize that it was preparing you for a different path entirely. Life has a way of rerouting you through failure. The underdog doesn't fight that, they trust it. They understand that not getting what they wanted often leads them to what they needed. Every closed door becomes a compass, pointing them toward the next opportunity. They stop obsessing over outcomes and start focusing on evolution. That's the ultimate freedom, knowing that nothing is wasted. Every setback holds wisdom if you're patient enough to listen. Every failure builds resilience if you're strong enough to learn. Every disappointment carries direction if you're humble enough to seek it. The underdog learns to extract value from pain, to collect insights from chaos, to transform breakdowns into breakthroughs. Because once you realize that life is constantly giving you data through your struggles, you stop running from them. You start using them. You start understanding that every mistake is a map, every rejection is a redirection, every loss is just another lesson that will lead to the win you've been fighting for. Now let's talk about step 5. Stay hungry, even after you win. One of the most dangerous moments in an underdog's journey is not when they're losing, it's when they start to win. Success has a way of softening even the strongest spirits, of convincing you that the climb is over, that the hunger which once fueled you can now rest. But the truth is, the moment you stop being hungry is the moment you start to fall. Staying hungry even after you win is what separates those who rise for a season from those who stay on top for a lifetime. The underdog mindset is built on the idea that the fight never ends. Every victory is just another step, not the finish line. You have to protect your hunger the way others protect their comfort. Because hunger is what keeps you alive inside, what keeps you sharp, focused, and grounded in the pursuit of constant growth. When you're hungry, you remain a student, never a master. You keep learning, keep pushing, keep evolving, and that's what keeps you dangerous. When you finally reach the goals you've worked so hard for, there's a temptation to relax, to take a breath and say, I've made it. And while rest is necessary, comfort is deadly. Comfort lulls you into complacency. It whispers, you've done enough. But the underdog knows that the moment you start believing that, you begin to lose the very edge that got you there. Hunger isn't just a feeling, it's a discipline. It's waking up every day with gratitude for what you've achieved, but with fire for what's still possible. It's refusing to let yesterday's win make you blind to tomorrow's challenge. Staying hungry means understanding that success is rented, not owned, and the rent is due every single day. The reason so many people fail after achieving success is because they forget what got them there. They start to crave ease instead of excellence. They start to chase comfort instead of challenge. They start to play it safe instead of risking growth. The underdog never forgets where they came from. They remember the struggle, the rejection, the grind. They keep that chip on their shoulder alive, not out of bitterness, but out of remembrance. That chip is what reminds them that they're still the same person who fought through the darkness to reach the light. Staying hungry means keeping that humility, that gratitude, that fire alive inside you no matter how high you climb. Because success can fool you into thinking the climb is over when, in reality, the mountain only gets steeper. When you're still hungry after you win, your relationship with success changes. You stop chasing trophies and start chasing impact. You stop working for recognition and start working for purpose. You begin to see success not as something to possess, but something to use. You use your platform, your influence, your knowledge to build something greater than yourself. That's how true champions think. They're not satisfied with being the best once they want to keep evolving, to keep setting new standards. They understand that greatness isn't a destination, it's a lifestyle. You don't arrive at it, you live it. Staying hungry also means staying teachable. One of the biggest mistakes people make after winning is assuming they know it all. They stop listening, stop learning, stop questioning. But the underdog knows that knowledge is endless. They understand that mastery is an illusion. There's always another level, always something new to learn, always someone better to study. Staying hungry means remaining curious, even when you're successful. It means looking at your achievements and asking, how can I do this better? How can I grow from here? The moment you think you've learned it all, you start dying inside. The hunger to learn is what keeps your mind sharp and your spirit alive. There's a quiet danger in being praised too much. When people start telling you how great you are, it's easy to start believing it. But praise is a trap if you don't keep perspective. The underdog learns to take compliments as motivation, not medication. They don't let praise become a sedative that dulls their drive. They appreciate recognition but never rely on it. Because if you need applause to stay motivated, you'll die when the clapping stops. True hunger comes from within, it's independent of praise or criticism. You keep working not because someone's watching, but because you're addicted to growth. You're driven by something deeper than validation, purpose. Staying hungry also means staying uncomfortable. Growth never happens in comfort. The underdog thrives in discomfort because it keeps them awake, alert, evolving. Even after success, they deliberately put themselves in situations that challenge them, that stretch them beyond their limits. They seek out new mountains to climb. Because once you've conquered one arena, it's easy to stay there, to dominate the same field over and over. But hunger pushes you to explore new fields, to face new fears, to start from zero again. That's how you keep evolving. Every time you step into something unfamiliar, you remind yourself what it means to fight again. And in that fight, your hunger stays alive. When you stay hungry, your motivation shifts from proving people wrong to proving yourself right. In the beginning, the underdog fights to silence the doubters. But once you win, those voices fade, and that's when many lose direction. Because their hunger was built on external noise. But the true underdog learns to create internal motivation. They no longer need haters to push them. They've built enough discipline to push themselves. Their hunger comes from the desire to see how far they can go, how much they can evolve, how much more they can create. It's no longer about validation, it's about evolution. Success can be a dangerous comfort zone if you let it. It makes you want to protect what you have instead of pursuing what's next. But protection isn't progress. The underdog refuses to live in the past, no matter how glorious it was. They treat every win as temporary and every loss as fuel. They're grateful for what they've done, but they're obsessed with what's still ahead. They don't romanticize old victories because they know the world moves fast. The only way to stay relevant is to keep growing. That's why the underdog never stops building. They treat every day like they're still at the bottom, hungry to prove themselves again. Because in truth, they're not competing with others anymore, they're competing with who they were yesterday. Staying hungry requires humility. It's easy to let ego take over when success comes. You start thinking you're untouchable, above mistakes, beyond correction. But humility keeps you grounded. It reminds you that no matter how much you know, there's always more to learn. No matter how much you've achieved, there's always more to give. Humility and hunger go hand in hand. Hunger without humility becomes arrogance, but humility without hunger becomes stagnation. The underdog balances both. They know they've done great things, but they act like they've done nothing yet. That's the paradox that keeps them growing. The hunger that drives the underdog isn't desperation, it's discipline. Desperation fades once you've achieved something. Discipline doesn't. It's waking up every day and doing what needs to be done, even when you no longer need to. It's maintaining your standard even when no one expects you to. It's doing the same hard work that got you there, even when the stakes have changed. Hunger is a state of mind, a refusal to settle, a commitment to keep raising your own bar. It's a lifestyle, not a phase. And those who live by it never stop evolving. Staying hungry also means staying connected to your why. The reason most people lose their fire after success is because they forget why they started in the first place. They lose touch with the purpose that drove them when they had nothing. But the underdog never forgets their why. They keep it close, guard it fiercely, and let it guide them. It's the reminder that keeps them humble when they succeed and resilient when they fail. When you know why you do what you do, every victory feels like a step towards something bigger, not the end of the journey. The world is full of people who made it once and disappeared. They got comfortable. They stopped learning. They let success sedate their ambition. But the underdog refuses to let that happen. They understand that success is not a resting place, it's a launch pad. It's not about reaching the top, it's about staying there by constantly reinventing yourself. They keep pushing boundaries, taking risks, challenging norms. They keep moving forward because they know that if they're not growing, they're decaying. Hunger is what keeps life exciting. What keeps you from turning into a museum of your past achievements? The most powerful people in the world are the ones who are still hungry after they've won everything. They're the ones who show up to practice even when they're already champions, who keep training like they're still fighting for their first break. That's the underdog spirit. It never dies, it just evolves. Hunger isn't something you're born with, it's something you choose to maintain. It's a fire that needs constant fueling through new goals, new challenges, new experiences. Because if you're not feeding your hunger, you're feeding your comfort. And comfort is the enemy of greatness. Even when life rewards you with success, you must remember the version of yourself that fought for it. The version that stayed up late, that failed and tried again, that believed when no one else did. That version of you must never die. That's the person who built everything you have now, and that's the person who will take you to the next level. Staying hungry is about honoring that version of yourself, keeping their spirit alive, their discipline sharp, their fire burning. It's about realizing that success doesn't change who you are. It magnifies it. If you were disciplined before, you'll be more disciplined now. If you were hungry before, you'll be unstoppable now. To stay hungry, you must never confuse satisfaction with fulfillment. Satisfaction is fleeting, it comes from the external, from applause, money, recognition. Fulfillment comes from the internal, from knowing you're still growing, still giving, still creating. The underdog chases fulfillment, not fame. They know that the true measure of success isn't how much you've achieved, but how much you've evolved and contributed. And the only way to keep evolving is to stay hungry. Hunger keeps you humble. It keeps you human. It keeps you grounded in the process instead of distracted by the outcome. It's what keeps the fire burning long after the world stops watching. Because at the end of the day, the hunger that got you here is the same hunger that will take you further. The grind doesn't end, it just changes form. Success isn't the signal to stop. It's the challenge to start again, this time from a higher level, with a stronger mindset and a deeper purpose. The underdog knows that no matter how high they climb, there's always another peak waiting. And as long as that hunger lives within them, they'll never stop climbing. You started this video as someone the world might underestimate, but now you know better. You know how to turn disadvantage into drive, belief into armor, effort into identity, setbacks into data, and success into the fuel that keeps you hungry. This isn't a feel-good speech, it's a contract. With yourself. From this moment on, you don't wait for doors to open, you build your own. You don't beg for belief, you earn it. You don't chase shortcuts, you master the long road. And when the noise gets loud, you remember who you are, the one who keeps showing up. So here's the challenge. Pick one step and live it today. Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient. Today. Send the text. Make the call. Do the reps. Study the page. Ship the work. Stack one undeniable action before you sleep, and let it be the proof you promised yourself. If this lit a fire in you, share it with someone who's still grinding in the dark. Subscribe and lock in with me. This is where the overlooked become undeniable. Drop your underdog move for today in the comments so the whole squad can hold you accountable. Remember, talent can be questioned, timing can be debated, but work ethic, resilience, and hunger cannot be denied. Keep your head down and your standards high. Keep your circle tight and your purpose louder than your excuses. And when the world finally asks how you did it, you'll smile because you didn't talk your way here. You built your way here. This is your blueprint. This is your moment. Felt underestimated, like people look at you and see less than what you know you're capable of? Good. Because that's exactly where every underdog story begins. When people doubt you, that's your spark. When they overlook you, that's your edge. And when they say you can't, that's when you must. Being underestimated isn't a curse, it's a gift. It's your greatest advantage if you know how to use it. Because while they're busy counting you out, you're busy putting in the work they'll never see coming. They won't see the early mornings, the sleepless nights, or the grind when nobody's watching. But one day they'll see the results and they'll call it luck. That's the beauty of the underdog mindset. It's quiet, relentless, and doesn't seek validation. It earns respect. The world loves to label people. Too small, too late, too broke, too inexperienced. They love to box you in because it makes them feel safe. But the underdog doesn't fit in the box, they break it open. They don't play by the rules that were written to keep them small. They write their own story, their own pace, their own destiny. Maybe you've been told that you don't have what it takes. Maybe you've been ignored, rejected, or left behind. That's okay. Because when you stop needing approval, you become unstoppable. You stop chasing validation and start chasing greatness. Every underdog has one thing in common: they've been tested. They've been knocked down, they've tasted failure. But instead of breaking, they build. They take that pain, that frustration, that doubt, and they turn it into fuel. The underdog mindset isn't about pretending life is easy. It's about knowing it's hard and doing it anyway. It's about walking into every battle already counted out, but walking out a winner because you refuse to quit. That's what separates the ones who dream from the ones who do. So if you've ever felt invisible, underestimated, or unworthy, remember this: the world doesn't decide your value, you do. And the moment you stop waiting for recognition and start moving with purpose, everything changes. Because the underdog doesn't need a cheerleader, they need a reason. And if your reason burns deep enough, nothing can stop you. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to build that fire, how to turn every disadvantage into your superpower. This is the 5-step underdog mindset blueprint, a simple, proven path that transforms rejection into motivation, fear into courage, and doubt into dominance. No matter where you start, this mindset will take you further than talent, further than luck, and further than anyone ever expected you to go. Because in the end, it's not about proving them wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Now let's talk about step 1, embrace the disadvantage. Every underdog begins at a place of struggle. It's the starting point. No one envies the bottom, the shadows, the space where nobody is watching, nobody is cheering, and nobody expects anything from you. But that's exactly where greatness is built. To embrace the disadvantage means to stop wishing you were somewhere else. Stop comparing your starting line to someone else's, and stop resenting your pain. It means realizing that the very things that make your journey harder are the same things that can make you stronger. The disadvantage isn't your enemy. It's your teacher, your trainer, and your greatest advantage in disguise. Most people are obsessed with finding the easiest way forward, constantly chasing shortcuts and comfort. But the underdog knows that comfort kills hunger, and hunger is the one thing you can't fake. It's born from struggle, from doubt, from years of being overlooked. Every setback adds another layer to your hunger, another reason to keep fighting when others give up. The disadvantage sharpens you. It forces you to think, adapt, and evolve in ways that privilege never will. It builds grit, patience, and emotional armor that can't be bought or taught. When you embrace your disadvantage, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as the architect of your own rise. It's easy to say, I can't because of where I came from. It's easy to blame the lack of support, the lack of resources, the lack of luck. But the truth is, those are just excuses disguised as reasons. The moment you flip that mindset, everything changes. The underdog says, I'm not behind, I'm just in training. That mindset rewires your brain. You start to look at challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities. To toughen up, to improve, to learn something others never had to. The very fact that you have to work harder makes you better prepared for the moment success arrives. Because while others coast on comfort, you're sharpening your edge. You're building endurance that will carry you long after others burn out. Think about it, every legend, every success story you've ever admired started from a disadvantage. They were told they weren't good enough, strong enough, smart enough, or connected enough. But they turned that pain into purpose. They let every no become fuel for their yes. The underdog doesn't ignore the disadvantage, they use it. It's what gives them an edge, what fuels their consistency. When you're at the bottom, you develop a kind of desperation that's rare. It's not the kind that makes you reckless, it's the kind that makes you resourceful. When you don't have options, you become creative. When you don't have support, you learn to rely on yourself. When you don't have recognition, you learn to find fulfillment in the grind itself. You learn to love the process not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Embracing your disadvantage means turning your pain into power. It means looking at everything that once held you back and saying, this is what's going to make me unstoppable. The rejection, the loneliness, the struggle, it's not wasted. It's building character, discipline, and inner strength that will become the foundation of your success. When you have nothing, you learn to create something out of nothing. When you're overlooked, you learn to stand out by sheer force of will. That's what separates the underdog from everyone else. They understand that the struggle is sacred. The nights you thought about quitting, the moments that broke you down, the times you felt like no one cared, those are the exact moments that forged you. You don't rise in spite of your disadvantage, you rise times because times of it. There's a quiet strength in being underestimated. When people expect little from you, you're free. Free to experiment, to fail, to reinvent yourself without pressure. Every mistake becomes data. Every setback becomes insight. You don't carry the weight of expectation. Instead, you move in silence, building something no one sees coming. That's what makes your comeback so powerful. When you finally rise, it shocks the world, but not you. You knew all along what you were capable of. You just needed time, struggle, and doubt to mold you into the version of yourself that could handle it. That's the hidden beauty of being at a disadvantage. It prepares you for the spotlight without you even realizing it. The world tends to pity the underdog, but the underdog doesn't need pity, they need purpose. And the disadvantage gives them that. It gives them the why that pushes them out of bed when motivation is gone. It gives them the reason to show up when no one else does. When you start from the bottom, your victories mean more. They're not given, they're earned, clawed, fought for. Every inch of progress carries weight. Every win carries a story. People who start with everything can't understand the satisfaction of earning something from nothing. They'll never know what it feels like to turn rejection into a roadmap, or to see failure as feedback instead of finality. When you embrace your disadvantage, you also stop comparing yourself to others. You realize that everyone's running a different race. The only thing that matters is your lane, your pace, your mission. You stop measuring progress in likes, views, or validation, and start measuring it in growth, effort, and discipline. The disadvantage gives you focus. It strips away distractions and reminds you why you started. When you have less, you're forced to make more out of it. When the world tells you no, you learn to build your own yes. That's the essence of the underdog spirit: self-made confidence, earned pride, and a relentless drive to keep pushing, no matter how steep the climb. Embracing the disadvantage also means embracing patience. Because the underdog's journey isn't fast, it's forged over time. You can't rush mastery, you can't shortcut growth. The very fact that your path is harder means your roots go deeper. You build foundation before you build fame. And that's why when the spotlight finally hits, you're unshakable. People who rise too fast often fall just as quickly. But you've spent years building your base, failing quietly, learning deeply. You've built something real, and that kind of strength doesn't crumble under pressure. That's what happens when you embrace your disadvantage. You build substance over show. The disadvantage gives you empathy. It makes you understand struggle, relate to others, and appreciate the grind. You become someone who doesn't look down on people because you've been there. You know what it's like to be ignored, to fight for every opportunity. That humility becomes your armor. It keeps you grounded when success arrives. It reminds you that your worth isn't defined by where you started, but by how far you've come. And because of that, you never take anything for granted. Every win feels sacred because you know the price you paid to earn it. To embrace the disadvantage is to embrace truth. The truth that life isn't fair. The truth that nobody's coming to save you. The truth that effort will always outweigh excuses. Once you accept that, you become dangerous. Because you stop wasting time hoping for easy, you start preparing for hard. You stop complaining about your position and start commanding it. You stop feeling sorry for yourself and start building yourself. The disadvantage becomes the gym where your character is trained. Every rep of struggle adds muscle to your mindset. Every rejection adds resilience. Every failure adds fuel. You start realizing that the things that once made you feel behind are actually what make you unstoppable. There's something powerful about being overlooked. It forces you to rely on something deeper than approval. It forces you to rely on yourself. You stop chasing applause and start chasing improvement. You stop trying to impress others and start trying to impress your future self. The underdog mindset is born in the silence of those moments when nobody's watching but you still give your all. When you decide that effort is your identity, not outcome. That's how you turn your disadvantage into your drive. The pain becomes your push. The rejection becomes your rhythm. The struggle becomes your story. And when people finally start noticing you, when the world begins to whisper your name, you'll look back and realize that every delay was divine. Every struggle had a purpose. Every obstacle was building the person you needed to become to handle what's next. You'll understand that you never needed to escape your disadvantage, you needed to embrace it. Because the fire that fuels the underdog doesn't come from comfort. It comes from pressure. It comes from pain. It comes from knowing you were counted out and showing up anyway. That's the essence of embracing the disadvantage, turning your lowest points into the very reason you rise. You stop running from your circumstances and start running toward your potential. You stop blaming the world for being unfair and start using that unfairness to build fire inside you. You understand that every disadvantage is secretly preparing you for the moment when your preparation meets opportunity. And when that moment comes, it won't be luck. It won't be chance. It'll be the result of every silent day, every lonely night, and every hard-earned lesson that taught you what true strength really means. Because in the end, the disadvantage doesn't define you, it refines you. It doesn't break you, it builds you. And that's where the underdog's true power begins. Now let's talk about step 2. Build unshakable self-belief. There's a point in every underdog's journey when you realize that no one is coming to believe in you. No one is going to hand you the confidence you're waiting for. No one is going to whisper in your ear and say, "You've got this." The truth is, belief is built in silence, through repetition, effort, and proof. It's not a gift, it's earned. To build unshakable self-belief means to stop depending on external validation and start generating it from within. It's learning to trust yourself even when results don't show yet, even when you fail repeatedly, even when the world laughs at your dreams. Because self-belief is not about pretending you're invincible, it's about knowing you'll stand back up every time you fall. It's not built through comfort or compliments, it's built through consistency. Every time you do what you said you'd do, you teach your mind that you can be trusted. And that is how unshakable confidence begins, one kept promise at a time. Most people think belief is a feeling, but it's not. It's a discipline. It's showing up when you doubt yourself. It's choosing action over excuses. It's looking in the mirror and seeing potential instead of limitation. When you build belief, you're building evidence. You're collecting proof that you're capable. Every rep at the gym, every late night study session, every small goal achieved, it's a deposit in the bank of confidence. The more you deposit, the richer your belief becomes. Confidence isn't a burst of motivation. It's a quiet knowing that you'll figure it out no matter what. You've seen yourself survive too much to quit now. You've learned that failure doesn't define you, it refines you. That's the foundation of the underdog's belief. They've been counted out so many times that their belief stopped being fragile. It became forged, hammered, and hardened through trial and rejection. The underdog doesn't need the world to clap for them. They've learned to clap for themselves. They don't need someone to say you're good enough because they've proven it to themselves over and over through their actions. Belief is a habit, not a moment. It's what happens when you keep pushing long after you should have stopped. It's what happens when you choose to believe that your hard work means something even if nobody else sees it yet. Every time you follow through on your word, every time you push past resistance, you strengthen your identity. You stop seeing yourself as a struggler and start seeing yourself as someone who wins battles, someone who gets things done. And once your identity shifts, the world can't take that from you. Building self-belief means facing your fears instead of running from them. Most people let fear paralyze them, but the underdog uses fear as a compass. They know that fear often points toward the things that matter most. If you're scared to do it, it's probably something that will grow you. So they lean in, not away. They fail forward. Because every time you do something that scares you and survive it, your belief grows stronger. You start to realize that fear is just a sign of potential, not limitation. You build a history of courage, and that history becomes your confidence. When you've been through enough storms and you're still standing, you stop doubting your ability to handle rain. That's the quiet strength of an underdog. They don't just say, "I can do this." They know it because they've done it before. But belief doesn't come easy. It requires you to face the harshest version of yourself, the voice in your head that says you're not enough. Every person has that voice. It whispers during your failures, it mocks you when things go wrong, it feeds off your insecurities. The difference between those who make it and those who don't is that the underdog learns to talk back. They replace that voice with a louder one, the one that says, I've been here before and I made it out. They stop feeding their doubt with fear and start feeding their faith with action. You can't think your way into confidence, you have to earn it through movement. Every step forward, no matter how small, quiets that inner critic. When you build unshakable belief, your perspective shifts. You stop seeing problems as proof that you're not good enough. You start seeing them as invitations to rise higher. You stop interpreting setbacks as signs of weakness and start seeing them as training sessions for strength. You begin to understand that nobody wakes up confident. Confidence is what you gain after walking through your own fire. And once you've done that enough times, something powerful happens. You start to trust yourself. Not because everything goes right, but because you know you can handle it when it doesn't. That's the real definition of self-belief. Not blind optimism, but deep trust in your own resilience. The reason most people give up isn't lack of talent, it's lack of belief. They could have made it, but they convinced themselves they couldn't. They stopped before they even started because their self-doubt screamed louder than their potential. But the underdog learns to silence that doubt through repetition. They prove it wrong every single day. They don't wait for perfect conditions or perfect confidence, they move anyway. Action comes first, belief follows. You don't become confident and then take action. You take action until you become confident. It's through the process of doing the hard things that your brain starts to believe, I can do hard things. That's how underdogs grow stronger, they act their way into belief. There's something magnetic about someone who truly believes in themselves. You can feel it in their presence. They move differently. They don't brag, they don't beg for attention, but there's a certainty in their eyes that says, I'm going to make this happen. That kind of energy doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from alignment. It comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. The underdog doesn't need external validation because their validation comes from the grind. It comes from surviving storms most people would have drowned in. Every scar becomes proof of strength. Every bruise becomes a badge of honor. And that inner knowing, that deep self-trust is what separates belief from ego. Ego is loud, belief is calm. Ego says, I'm better than you. Belief says, I'll become better than I was yesterday. Unshakable self-belief also means forgiving yourself. Because you will fail, you will fall short, you will mess up. But belief isn't about pretending that won't happen. It's about not letting those moments define you. You have to learn to separate failure from identity. Just because you fail doesn't mean you're a failure. The underdog learns to analyze mistakes, not internalize them. They learn to ask, what can I learn? Instead of, why me? That shift alone builds incredible confidence because it takes your power back from circumstance. You stop being at the mercy of outcomes and start controlling your response to them. That's real strength. Building belief requires isolation. There will be seasons where you have to pull back, cut out noise, and focus on your craft, because belief grows in solitude. It's in those quiet hours when it's just you, your doubts, and your goals that true confidence is built. You test yourself, fail privately, improve quietly. And then, one day, the results speak so loudly you don't have to. The world sees confidence. They call it natural talent. But you know it's just repetition. They see effortless success. You remember the effort. That's what gives your belief depth. It's rooted in experience, not illusion. You also have to protect your belief. Don't hand it to people who haven't earned the right to influence it. Not everyone deserves access to your dreams. Some people project their fear onto you. They'll tell you your goals are too big, your timing is wrong, your plan is unrealistic. But their limitations are not your reality. Belief means filtering out those voices and guarding your vision. It means surrounding yourself with those who challenge you, not those who drain you. It means creating an environment where your confidence can grow, not one where it constantly has to defend itself. You owe it to your future to protect that belief like it's sacred, because it is. To build unshakable belief, you must also be willing to be misunderstood. People will question your choices. They'll laugh at your dreams. They'll assume you've lost your mind for wanting something more. But that's the price of conviction. The underdog accepts that most people won't understand their hunger because it wasn't meant for them to. Belief means walking alone sometimes. It means trusting your gut even when logic says no. It means betting on yourself even when the odds say you shouldn't. Because if you're not willing to believe in yourself when no one else does, why should they? The moment you decide that your belief doesn't depend on their approval, you become unstoppable. You don't need to fake confidence to have it. True belief doesn't need performance. It needs preparation. You don't need to shout about your goals to make them real. You need to work on them until the results do the talking. Every small win compounds. Every quiet victory builds the foundation of your self-trust. Over time, belief becomes your default setting. You stop seeking reassurance and start giving it to others. You become the person who says, if I did it, you can too. That's how the underdog becomes the inspiration. Not because they never doubted, but because they kept moving through the doubt until belief became inevitable. Building unshakable self-belief is the second pillar of the underdog mindset because it transforms everything. Once you believe, the impossible becomes negotiable. Obstacles turn into puzzles. Critics turn into background noise. The world doesn't get easier, you just get stronger. You no longer need guarantees because your faith in yourself is the guarantee. You stop chasing certainty and start creating it. Every action becomes a statement. I trust myself. And that trust, that deep, unshakable faith in who you're becoming, becomes the foundation for every victory that follows. Now let's talk about step 3. Outwork every expectation. There comes a time in every underdog's journey when belief isn't enough. You have to back it with action so relentless that it silences every doubt. You can talk about goals, visualize success, write affirmations, and dream all you want, but none of it means anything if you're not willing to outwork everyone in the room. The world doesn't reward wishes, it rewards work. The underdog understands this better than anyone because they've had to fight for every inch. They don't have the luxury of entitlement. They know the only thing they can control is their effort, and they decide early on that nobody will ever outwork them. While others talk about potential, they grind in silence. While others wait for motivation, they move through discipline. To outwork every expectation means to show up when it's hard, when it's boring, when nobody's watching, and when it feels like you're getting nowhere. It means doing more than what's required, not for recognition, but because you refuse to let opportunity slip through your fingers. The underdog doesn't aim to meet the standard, they aim to raise it. Most people underestimate how much work it takes to truly change their life. They want overnight transformation without paying the long-term price. They want success but not sacrifice. But the underdog knows that greatness demands a toll, and they're willing to pay it daily. They understand that effort compounds. Every small action, every extra hour, every decision to keep going. When others stop, these things build momentum that turns ordinary people into unstoppable forces. Outworking every expectation isn't just about hustling harder than others. It's about creating an identity around effort. It's about saying, I may not be the most talented, but I will be the most prepared. It's that quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've done the work, that you've earned your progress, that nothing has been handed to you. That's why the underdog's victories hit different. They're built from sweat, sacrifice, and self-belief. There's something powerful about a person who works when nobody's watching. That's where character is built. You can't fake work ethic in private. You can't post discipline. You can't Photoshop persistence. When the cameras are off, when the world isn't clapping, that's when the real work begins. The underdog thrives in that silence because they know the results will speak later. They don't need to announce every step. They let consistency do the talking. The late nights, the early mornings, the missed parties, the constant repetition, it all adds up. While others are distracted by comfort, the underdog is sharpening their craft. Every repetition, every practice, every moment spent improving, these are the invisible hours that separate good from great. Outworking every expectation is not about burnout or blind obsession. It's about controlled chaos. It's about channeling your hunger into structured effort. The underdog doesn't waste energy comparing their grind to others. They measure themselves against who they were yesterday. Every day becomes a chance to push the limits a little further. You don't need to leap forward. You just need to outwork your own excuses. Progress isn't always loud. It's often disguised as discipline, as saying no to comfort and yes to consistency. And when you learn to fall in love with repetition, when you find meaning in the mundane, that's when you gain the power others don't have the ability to endure. There will always be people with more resources, more connections, more talent. But effort is the great equalizer. Talent may open the door, but work ethic keeps you in the room. And the underdog knows that when talent stops trying, effort takes over. You don't have to be gifted, you just have to be relentless. You have to be willing to do the boring work long after everyone else has lost interest. Because consistency beats intensity every time. Anyone can work hard for a week, a month, even a year, but the underdog works hard times forever. Asterisk. They've turned effort into a lifestyle, not a phase. When you commit to outworking every expectation, you also learn to embrace the grind itself. Most people chase the finish line. The underdog learns to love the race. They understand that growth happens in the process, not just the result. It's in the countless repetitions that nobody sees, the lonely moments when you question if it's even worth it, the times when you fail and have to start again. That's where champions are made. Every setback becomes a new chance to work smarter, harder, and deeper. You start seeing obstacles differently. They're no longer roadblocks, they're resistance training. Every time life pushes you down, you push back harder. That's the mentality that separates the average from the extraordinary. The truth is, the world remembers outcomes, not effort, but effort is what builds the outcome. Every victory has a backstory filled with invisible hours of work, and the underdog embraces that truth. They understand that to the world, success will look sudden, but they know it's anything but. It's thousands of quiet decisions to keep going when quitting was easier. It's years of being unseen, unheard, unappreciated, and still showing up anyway. It's the mornings when your body says no, but your purpose says yes. The underdog knows that the work you do in private becomes the reward you earn in public. When you decide to outwork every expectation, you start living differently. You move with urgency. You stop waiting for the perfect moment because you realize it doesn't exist. You make the moment perfect through your effort. You stop blaming your circumstances because you understand that excuses don't produce results. You learn to respect the grind, not resent it. You show gratitude for the struggle because it's shaping you into someone capable of handling success. Most people think work is a punishment, but the underdog knows it's a privilege. Every hour spent improving is a step closer to the person you're meant to become. And when you work like that, relentlessly, intentionally, with heart, you change the way people see you. Suddenly, you're not just the underdog, you're the benchmark. The one who made something out of nothing. The one who didn't wait for opportunity but created it. People start wondering how you did it, how you stayed so consistent, how you kept your fire alive when they lost theirs. But they'll never understand because they weren't there in the dark with you. They didn't see the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt. They didn't feel the weight of working when no one believed in you. That's why your story will hit different. It's built from real struggle and real effort. Outworking expectations isn't just about proving others wrong, it's about proving your own resilience right. It's about showing yourself that you're capable of more than you thought. Every time you push through fatigue, you're sending a message to your mind, we don't quit. Every time you ignore distractions, you're strengthening your discipline.